Oh, that's a really good sound effect for that. All right. Well, we've discussed this so much when it first started that there was this whole idea of Biden coming in and blaming the unvaccinated. And there were some pretty appalling ways of sort of criminalizing people who were skeptical. And then a lot of glee from a lot of Democrats saying that, basically the Republican Party was going to kill itself, assuming that the unvaccinated were all, red state right wingers. And then what we saw, this was back in July of 2021, that the percent of the total population that's received at least one COVID vaccine dose by race, ethnicity, let's see, well, you can't see that line, but the bottom line is Black US citizens, then it's Hispanic, then white, and then Asian. So as Matt Stoller says, the partisan divide is real, but it's also only one divide. The least vaccinated group, Black Americans, is also the most Democratic leaning. So, first of all, I don't think you should wish death on anybody, even Republicans, Biden, like whatever. But like, even if you're only doing it selfishly, to have so much joy and like Schadenfreude with the people who are going to suffer because they're not vaccinated, and then not dig into who's most hesitant about getting the vaccine and why, it was an enormous public health failing, because now we see that so few people are getting the booster. And now the people who are vaccinated are making up a big percentage of the people who are dying. It's a very confusing message to people, and it serves the worst instincts of the skeptics.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can't tell the whole world that the vaccine is everything and then not expect them to think, well, it's not that big of a deal if masks aren't that important. I never see Biden on TV with masks. I see all these CDC events. I see doctors getting together. They don't have masks on. The vaccine must do it. The vaccine must do it. And this is where I'll agree with a lot of the vaccine skeptics. Fauci lied to us about a lot of stuff. The administration lied to us about a lot of stuff. They continue to lie to us about a lot of stuff. But that doesn't in itself make the science wrong that there is COVID and COVID is killing people and we need protections.
Absolutely. And, I think that, so a few different things. One is, you can't say that you're going to do a vaccine only approach and then not force big pharma to release the patents and to listen to somebody like Bill Gates, who's making billions of dollars, and the CEOs of Moderna and Pfizer making billions of dollars off this, not releasing the patents so that the global South has no vaccine. Right. So right away, there is an incongruity in that messaging, right? If you're going to say that not being vaccinated is what's going to keep this pandemic going, and then, but the truth is that the bottom line and making my friends in big pharma billions of dollars is more important than vaccinating the world, you've already lost. Right.
You lost play. Yeah. Well, and then if that is your only weapon, vax rates should be high and booster rates should be high, and your messaging even on that is failing.
Exactly.
So we don't even have high vaccination rates.
We don't have high vaccination rates. And instead of like making fun of people who weren't getting vaccinated, there should have been more of a push to find out why people were hesitant, which people were hesitant, right? Like, yes, okay, Republicans were the most hesitant to be vaccinated at the beginning, but there were a lot of people right behind them, people between 30 and 49, rural residents, Black adults, essential workers. Remember our big heroes, essential workers, independents, healthcare workers, right? So like, already that should be a red flag that you cannot just tell people, well, you're just being ignorant or you're just a Trumper or whatever the hell. There were real reasons that people were reluctant. a lot of people were very worried about possible side effects. And part of the reason they were worried is because they weren't getting paid sick leave to get the vaccine. And then when you hear, well, for some people, it laid them out for a couple days, right? But if you don't have paid sick leave and you're an essential worker and you make, minimum wage that you can barely scrape by on, you can't then afford to have a few days convalescing. You have kids, you have there's stuff going on. So instead of ever dealing with the root problem, also a lot of the people were uninsured. We live in a country where we have how many tens of millions who are uninsured or underinsured. They were much more likely to be skeptical. They don't have primary care doctors. They can't talk to their doctor about the risk benefit analysis. We hear about myocarditis for young men. That is something that actually exists. And in other countries, they tell maybe you get Pfizer instead of Moderna. But if you don't even have a primary care physician that you can speak to, somebody that you trust, because our country has decided that we are fine with tens of millions of people going without health care, there's lots of different causes of the skepticism.
Which, I mean, that's a damning statement on our healthcare system, but that's why the Black support for vaccine hesitancy was so high at 35%, which is why they really want to push the narrative that it was all about historically experimenting on Black people, which was not actually the case. I mean, that factored in. There's no doubt about it. But their relationship, Black people's relationship with the doctors, is awful. Like it's a real thing that's measurable. I mean, they're less likely to be prescribed pain medicine when in pain.
Right. And more likely to have their concerns dismissed. Right. Yep.
Yeah, more likely to have their concerns dismissed. So their distrust of the doctors goes way beyond just the experimentation in the past. It's deeper than that.
Right.
But none of these questions were asked. They just found a quick excuse with, well, there was testing in the past, but they should trust it now. But there's no experimenting on Black people anymore.
And then I think the idea of shutting down any questions or discussions, that also just makes people feel more hesitant, because if you're not willing to entertain any people who are mistrustful and use that as an opportunity to show them the proof of why they should trust this vaccine or the science, and you just say trust science, and if you disagree with Fauci, you are anti-science, when we saw so many decisions being made by the CDC and the Biden administration, and of course the Trump administration, and public health experts who were on TV all the time lying to us or talking about endemicity, using that word improperly, and then we find out, it was actually McKinsey, word speak for talking about, Pete Buttigieg's old company, for basically about how to get the economy back up and running. And that was actually the big driver of so many of the public health decisions. Was we are nervous that if kids aren't in school, that parents can't go to work. And if parents are working remotely, then big real estate companies that lease office space are going to lose money, and people aren't flying and people aren't driving as much, and fossil fuel companies and big oil is upset that everything's shutting down. And so many of those decisions were based on economics, not on public health. Well, that also is going to lead to a lot of mistrust, because there is a profit motive and a conflict of interest coming from the people who are pretending that they are just following the science.
Exactly. And that's where I think a lot of people need to realize you can be anti-big pharma and still believe in science. Those two things are not incongruent.
Right.
But it does, we should also understand the people that don't trust science.
Right.
But to the larger point that I would like to make this show that's really important is, if you're a skeptic and you only consume skeptic shows, they're not showing you the science, really. They're showing you only the anti-science. They're not, a lot of these shows are not, they're not having a doctor on who believes when I say mainstream science, that's not mainstream media. That's
Right.
what most
The
scientists,
consensus, right?
consensus science is a
Yeah.
better way of
Yeah.
phrasing it. But there's a reason that scientists come to a consensus, and then they're
Right.
peer-reviewed studies. And if you're
And it
only
doesn't,
seeing studies that haven't been peer-reviewed, and they're by people that aren't respected in the industry by their peers, I mean, you might want to look at why, and you might want to see what do they have to say about that guy.
yeah.
Let's hear a doctor's view on that. And
Yeah. And what are that person's incentives? Because usually they're not pure. It's not that it's not that they're anti-big pharma. It's that they're getting their money from a different big business or, supplement industry or whatever. I do just want to say, because there are two things. And I think when I bring this up, people think that I'm anti-vax, and I'm not at all. I've been vaccinated. I mean, I've had 5 shots now. So crazy. But when you hear that 60% of the people who died in September were vaccinated, it's not, that to me is not proof that the vaccines don't work, although of course they're not working the way we were initially told they were going to work. But it is indicative that we have to have that Swiss cheese model of protections, that we cannot just rely on vaccines. And so the reason I bring that up is because I think a lot of liberals who I know think we're done with it and move on. And 10,000 people are dying every month, but most of them don't even realize that the numbers are that high because we don't talk about it. But that they're protected because of the vaccine. And yes, you have a much lower rate of hospitalization and dying and severe illness if you're vaccinated. However, the long COVID arises from even the most mild cases where you might not even know that you have COVID, or it feels like a small cold. You can still have really drastic, severe reactions. And you can still die. So wear a fucking mask, people. What the hell is happening? Put on a mask. God.
I'm sorry, but that tells me a lot about your politics if you're not willing to wear a mask.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of people. I mean, it doesn't mean I don't know where you stand on the pendulum politically, but like, if you want to be a progressive, you're supposed to care about everybody. And
that's right.
If you're not willing to wear a mask, which is not it's not really affecting your life if you wear a fucking mask. So it's hard for me to believe you care about the working class when so many in the working class are frontline workers, who are most healthcare workers. I mean, look what's happening
people
to our
of
healthcare
color,
system
right? Yeah. Oh my
right
gosh.
now.
Yeah.
It's atrocious. And the scale of COVID misinformation belief, like half these people think COVID is just the sniffles. Half of them think masks don't work, and they just latch on to some garbage science that masks don't work.
Yeah.
Think whatever you want about the vax. I give you full permission, not that you need my permission, but I won't hate you if you don't trust the vax. But like, it's a mask,
but do
buddy.
Something. Yeah. Just do. Yeah.
And if you're a communist and a socialist and you're not willing to wear a mask,
you've really told on yourself. Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, the pandemic of the unvaccinated was a really disgusting way to divide the nation and to cast blame on an ongoing pandemic that the administration was doing very little to try to prevent. And so they just made one group the scapegoat, thinking it was just Republicans, and it really wasn't just Republicans. Not that that would have been okay. And it's failed spectacularly, because then when vaccinated people start dying and being infected and spreading it, it just makes the whole believe science line fall flat, because clearly just being vaccinated is not enough.
It's not. And it's not just not enough. We're never going to get anywhere to make any progress on fighting this virus. It's like you're building in this whole system where, I mean, it's wrecking the economy. I mean, there are other sections we're going to get to on the effect of the economy, but like, how do you expect this to continue? Do you want to be talking about COVID forever?
No. And so they're just going to stop talking about it. I mean, it's the craziest thing. Yeah. All right, wait. I just want to make sure. If I don't think we had any, videos for that, but I just want to make sure there was one video that was a compilation of all the liberals who were blaming the unvaccinated when that line first came out that it was a pandemic of the unvaccinated. And it was so gross and depressing that I didn't even pull it. So should we move on?
Yeah, whatever. I see a tweet about Liana Wen that I haven't seen. So what
Oh
do we got?
yeah.
The unvaccinated should not be able to leave their home. Yeah, I mean, obviously, the unvaccinated are to blame. Oh, and now, I mean, the blame game. China is now going to be it. So they were.
Yeah, they were derided for their zero COVID and that's not realistic. And now that they've done exactly what the West wanted them to do, we're going to talk about the China virus again. I mean,
Yeah,
it just shows that
them.
liberals are just as bad as Trump, who tried to,
Yeah, even though the strain that's ripping through right now is not from China. I mean,
no, it's from New York.
It's from
Thanks,
New York.
Eric Adams. Yeah. I mean, yeah.